The Baseball by the Yard podcast, episode number 4, 5 pitching hacks to conserve energy so you can throw more innings. Hey folks, listen up. Baseball has a problem. On the positive side, new technology allows players and coaches to see, measure, and collect data on just about anything we want. But ask anybody who has been around the game for a while and they will tell you that something is missing. What I think is missing are the finer points of the game. Field awareness, the mental side, the approach, the ability to know when and how to make adjustments, baseball IQ, and the ability to think for yourself on the baseball field. Those things you can't measure, but if players don't have those skills, their days in the game of baseball are numbered. Do you agree? If so, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Baseball by the Yard podcast, the podcast dedicated to teaching all those finer points of the game to players and coaches. I'm Coach Bob McCreary, former professional player and coach. Let's start the show, and let's start changing how we teach the game. All right, hello everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Coach Bob McCreary. I'm the founder of baseballbytheyard.com. If you haven't been there yet, go check it out when you get a chance and look at all the content that I've had been posting there for well over 10 years now. Before I get into today's topic, I wanted to give a shout out to somebody that I've never actually met before, but I saw something that they posted online, and maybe the more I do these podcasts, maybe I'll actually do a segment. Maybe we'll call it like I won the Internet Award. Basically, I'm like a lot of you. I spend probably way too much time surfing my phone on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth. And I'm always coming across things that, it really hits home, really agree. So a lot of people out there who do get it, and so maybe I'll even give a shout out before every podcast. So I'll just start with this one. So I've never met this guy, but apparently his name is Coach Dana, I want to say Cavalia or Cavalia. It's spelled Cavalea. So Coach, sorry if I mispronounced your name there. But I was surfing through LinkedIn, and I came across a post that he had done. Now, underneath his name, it says he's connected with the New York Yankees, but it doesn't indicate what level or what his job is. At least I can't really tell. It's not all that clear. Now, after where it says New York Yankees, it says high performance executive coach to C-suite leaders. So I'm not sure what C-suite leaders means, but I have an idea what a performance coach is. So that's awesome. That's an interesting job. So maybe I'll shoot a message out to him and let him know I gave him a shout out on my podcast, and maybe he can tell me a little bit more about his occupation. Sounds really interesting. Anyway, I want to read his post because you just heard me talk about in the introduction to this podcast kind of what I'm all about and why I have the Baseball by the Yard podcast. And I think this post really gets to the same type of concept that I mentioned as to some of the problems we have in the game today. And not just a game, but I think it's a cultural issue as well. So let me read his post. And again, I found this on LinkedIn, so you can go search for him as well if you need to. So here's his post. Quote, "Damn it, take responsibility for God's sakes. Honestly, how hard is it? Answer the email, return the phone call, keep things organized, be on time. Simple things. You know what makes me sick? Everyone today is talking about growth, success, reaching their goals, blah, blah, blah. Yet, they keep messing up the little things. You cannot chase growth and not do the little things. If you want to be the best version of yourself, another cheesy line that is thrown around today like 1% better, start doing the above. Start today, start now, stop the nonsense. Coach." Folks, I think that sums it up. He also recognizes the need for people to give a lot more attention to the little things. Now, there's nothing wrong with paying attention to the large aspects of the game, the general pitching and hitting and all that stuff. But if you've been around the game a long time, you know that there are thousands of little things that players need to do on a regular basis for them to keep moving up into the higher levels of the game. That's why I created the website. baseball by the yard to hopefully pass on a lot of those little things. So it seems like Coach gets it. So good job. Well done. You win the first I Won the Internet award on the Baseball by the Yard podcast. Congratulations. Okay, so today's information is largely for pitchers and coaches who, of course, deal with pitchers, whether that's Little League, middle school, high school, college, and above. Now, one of the things that I think I always had an advantage in when I got into coaching was that I had a lot of higher level pitching experience. I was one of those two-way players straight through college. In high school, I was both a shortstop and a pitcher. You know, I'm not the only one who's ever done that. But I also did the same thing at the Division I level. I was thankful. I got a scholarship to Villanova University, which is a Division I school. Obviously, it's mostly known for basketball. But the baseball program is also Division I. And I was fortunate to pretty much step right into that program and be the starting shortstop for 4 years of my college career. But I also pitched. So my freshman and sophomore year, if I pitched, it was largely in those kind of midweek games where you're generally playing non-conference games. And for us, we were just playing a lot of the colleges in the Philadelphia area, like LaSalle, St. Joe's, Temple, and so forth. And on the weekends, we would play our Big East Conference games. And our conference schedule in our division was Seton Hall, Georgetown, and Pitt. And then, of course, us. So 4 teams in each division. So my freshman and sophomore year, I would generally play shortstop on the weekends, maybe have a relief appearance in one of the Big East games. And I would typically get a start midweek against one of those Philadelphia teams that were non-conference. Now, my junior and senior year, I was a starting shortstop still, but there were more times where I was in the starting rotation. So the way the Big East Conference games worked at the time was we would play 2 games on a Saturday and then 1 game on a Sunday against the same team. So let's say Seton Hall came in, we'd have a doubleheader Saturday, single game Sunday, 3-game series. And so I would play shortstop for the first 2 games during the doubleheader. And then there were times during some weekends where I would be the Sunday pitcher, which I'm very thankful I did not hurt my arm. I was blessed with, I guess, good genetics that I've never had a significant arm injury. But of course, that's really tough to do, to be a starting shortstop at the Division I level and then have to pitch on one of the conference games as well. Of course, I loved doing it, so I didn't have a problem with it. But one of the things that I learned was a lot of the little things when it comes to pitching and managing your energy. I had to, out of necessity. Now, when I got drafted by the Minnesota Twins after my senior year, I was drafted in the 19th round, and I remember when the scout called me and said, you know, hey, congratulations, we just want to inform you, you got drafted by the Minnesota Twins. And I was excited, of course, and, you know, asking information about when I leave and all that stuff. And then it dawned on me. I said to the scout, oh, wait a minute, did you draft me as a shortstop or a pitcher? Because there were some scouts who liked me as a shortstop, and there were some scouts that liked me as a pitcher. And he's like, oh, yeah. He paused, and he said, oh, yeah, shortstop, right, shortstop. And he was correct. I went off and started my career as a shortstop. And I got to the AA level as a shortstop, largely because I couldn't hit after the AA level. And so at that point, the Twins converted me into a pitcher, and I got back to the AA level as a pitcher. Now, even when I was playing shortstop, of course, I'm paying close attention to the pitchers on my team who are professional pitchers, some of whom became pretty successful major league pitchers as well. So I'm watching their routines, and I'm seeing what it means to be a good pitcher at the professional level. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to be a professional pitcher as well, and learning more as I went as well. So that when I got into coaching, I had a pretty big advantage in that I had some high-level pitching experience, not just the basic mechanics and drills and so forth, but a lot of the little things that successful pitchers do on a regular basis, because I had personal experience in it, but I had a chance to watch a lot of successful pitchers along the way as well. So if you're a coach at the high school level and you have a pretty significant pitching background, you have a big advantage because of how important pitching is. You're not just treating your pitchers on a surface level. You're teaching a lot of the little things that go into pitching success. So the theme of today's of podcast and the title talks about ways that you can conserve your energy. And a lot of players don't do some of these little things, which can negatively impact their ability to pitch farther into games. Now, I know there's a big trend in Major League Baseball to use a lot more relief pitchers and get the starter out in the fourth or fifth inning. But if you are a starter, and there are times where if you were able to conserve some of your energy, you may have been able to throw one, maybe two more innings. Okay, so the tips that I'm going to give you today are some of those little things that you may not have thought of or paid more attention to that might actually help you in the future. So to start off, the example that I would give is if you're a homeowner, you may have heard that there are people who will go out to your house and do a home energy audit. And what they do is they look for leaks. Okay, they look for leaks where your heat can escape or your air conditioning gets out. And so they will give you tips and information and ways in which you can insulate your house to stop those energy leaks. And so today's post with these 5 pitching hacks really is a pitching energy audit to get you to thinking about where some of the leaking may be happening in your energy and tighten that up so that you can conserve that energy for later in the game. Now, let me first start off by saying that there are some obvious things here. Obviously, throwing strikes is important. And when I'm talking to young kids, I basically try to tell them the 70-60 rule or 70-60 ratio. What that means is 70% represents the amount of first pitch strikes a pitcher should be throwing, as well as the amount of strikes they throw with their fastball. So 70% strikes, first pitch, 70% strikes with your fastball. 60% strikes is all your other pitchers, or all your other pitches. So changeup, curveball, whatever it is that you throw, your goal is to throw 6 out of every 10 in the strike zone. So if you could do that ratio, regardless of what level you're on, you're going to be more successful. So those are the obvious things that even a Little League coach who doesn't have a lot of pitching background knows that their pitchers just have to throw more strikes. So that goes without saying. Okay, so the energy hacks that I have today are beyond that. So when I come back, we'll start and give you the 5 hacks and go from there. Okay, so here we go with the 5 pitching hacks to conserve energy. Okay, these are in really no particular order. They're all important, but number 1 is pay attention to your pregame warm-ups. Okay, make sure you are not exerting too much energy when you are with your team warming up. Now, you'll see different things at different levels. At the younger levels, you typically have, prior to the game, all the players go down, they go out in the outfield, and they do a whole warm-up routine together. They may form a circle, do some stretching, run some sprints, short sprints, long sprints. They may have a whole regiment to get their bodies ready to warm up. Now, if you were to go watch a major league team and get there very early and you watch the team come out of the dugout, typically what you're going to find is the team will come out and generally warm up together. But that's basically just a minimum. What you'll generally find is after that minimum amount of warming up, the players often will go off and then continue their warm up based on their own individual needs. Okay, as you get older, coaches tend to give players a lot more freedom because they know every player is unique and has different needs. But at the younger levels, typically you pretty much do what everybody else does, and the coach pretty much tells everybody you're all going to warm up the same way. When I coach, even at the Little League level, if I had a pitcher who was starting that day, I would always make them pretty much exempt from a lot of the team warm-ups that they would do prior to the game because I wanted them to warm up specifically to pitch. And that could be very different depending on how the coach wants you to warm up. So I would tell that pitcher, whether it's Little League or high school or college, listen, you go down and you do what you need to do. And I would typically send the pitching coach down to oversee that. So it's not like the kid's going down and warming up by themselves and they have no idea what they're doing. There's a coach there who's overseeing that process. And I think that's important because a lot of pitchers, particularly when they're young, they exert a lot of energy in that pre-game warm-ups that they can conserve. They don't need to do that. They don't need to warm up like a shortstop or a catcher or an outfielder because they're going to pitch. And pitchers have to look for ways to conserve energy, and one of them is being very careful about how they are warming up prior to the game. So having that freedom to do what a pitcher needs to do can save some energy that you can use later in the game. Okay, now hack number 2 is something that I'm always telling my pitchers during the course of the game, and that is stay on the mound. It drives me nuts how many pitchers will take forever between pitches because they walk around the mound so much. Stay on the mound. Now, not only is it helping all the fielders behind you, because there aren't many things that infielders and defensive people hate more than their pitcher who is working extremely slowly. It drives infielders nuts. Okay, so working quick has its advantages for your defense, but it also can help you conserve energy. The more you walk around the mound, the more energy you're exerting. Another thing that I always want my pitchers to not do is a mistake you often see with little kids. They'll throw a pitch, they'll take 3 or 4 steps towards the catcher, catch the ball from the catcher, and then turn around and walk uphill up the mound. So if they are throwing, let's say, 70 pitches in a game, they're walking forward and then turning around and walking uphill 70 times. And that's a lot of energy that they're exerting. If they stay on the mound, they can conserve that energy, and that might allow them to throw more pitches later in the game. All right, the third one is make sure you're managing your bullpen sessions well. And there's a number of ways. Now, later on in this podcast, I'll talk about 2 posts that I wrote on this particular topic. But when I say managing your bullpen, I'm talking about the actual throwing you do off a mound prior to the game. And there's 2 big areas that you have to focus on. The first one is the number of pitches you throw, and the second one is the timing in which you throw your bullpen prior to the game. So let's take the first one, the number of pitches you throw. So let me tell you a story. When I was playing professional baseball, I was a shortstop. I'm not sure if I was a pitcher or a shortstop. Anyway, it was in Visalia, California. I was in the California League, and we had a kid on our team who was a very good pitcher, very young, and he actually played multiple years in the major leagues with a couple different teams. But our pitching coach was concerned because he thought that he was throwing way too many pitches in the bullpen. And the pitcher really wasn't all that responsive in listening to the pitching coach because the pitcher didn't think he was throwing that many pitches. And so the pitching coach walked up to me and said, "Hey, Bob, do me a favor. Here's a pitching chart, okay? What I want you to do is I want you to chart his pitches while he's warming up in the bullpen, and I want you to do it from the dugout so he doesn't know that you're charting his pitches." So I said, okay, that's fine. So I'm sitting in the dugout on the top step, and I'm watching him down the left field line throw his bullpen prior to the game. And I'm just charting the number of pitches. Like, I'm not charting like what he threw and where it was and all that stuff. I'm just checking off how many pitches that he threw. And so at the end of the pitching session, I looked, and he had almost 70 pitches in his bullpen session. And of course, the pitching coach, later on, the day after or wherever, took that pitching chart and showed it to him and said, "Do you realize you're throwing 70 pitches in the bullpen? And we have got to cut that down because you're throwing too many pitches prior to the game. And let's say you cut that down to 50 or maybe even 40 or below and make them more effective, then all those extra pitches you now save for the game." So if you can cut out maybe 10 pitches that you're pitching in the bullpen because you're more efficient with your work, that could be another inning right there. So the number of pitches is important. So make sure you're not throwing too little or too many pitches prior to the game. You want to be warmed up enough, but you don't want to be wasting pitches in the bullpen that you could be using out on the field there. Now, the second component is the timing. Okay, so this is important. Now, if you go to a major league game, and let's say the game starts at 7, Very often, you're going to see the starting pitcher walk from the bullpen to the dugout with maybe 5 minutes before the game. Now, I have seen high school kids and little league pitchers, they'll warm up an hour before the game, 30 minutes before the game, which is a total waste of time. Because if you warm up and you have more than, say, 5 or 10 minutes from the time you're done warming up to the time you go out on the mound, you're going to have to warm up again. And that's a lot of pitches that you're wasting. So the general rule is try to finish your bullpen session prior to the game anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. Once you get beyond 10 minutes, your body's going to start to cool down, and you're probably going to have to warm up more again, which is pitches that you could be conserving for later in the game. Now, that's for the starter. Now, relievers, it's a little more difficult because, I don't know if I'm going to pitch that day and so forth. So very often, you just have to get ready quick. That's one of the reasons why you might be a reliever, because you do have the ability to get warmed up quick. But one of the tips that I'll give my relievers is don't pitch down in the bullpen when you're warming up until you're 100%. Okay? I say pitch within 8 pitches of being ready. Because if you stop with about 8 pitches left before you're fully ready to go, you have to remember that when you get out on the mound as a reliever, you're going to get 8 pitches to warm up. And so if you're 100% ready in the bullpen and then you go out on the mound and throw 8 more pitches, well, that's 8 pitches that you could have thrown later in the game. So don't warm up to 100%. Warm up within 8 pitches of being ready so that when you get on the mound, you get those 8 pitches and you get a better feel for the mound, and now you're at 100% and you haven't wasted any of your pitches. All right, so number 4 is conserve your pre-inning pitches. Now, I mentioned when you come into a game, you get 8 pitches, but at most levels, when you go out again the next inning to pitch, you're only going to get 5 pitches to warm up between innings. But there's no rule that says you have to take all 5 pitches. I was blessed with one of those arms that got loose very quickly, especially when the weather was warm and it was very hot. And I found out early that I didn't need 5 pitches in order to get ready. Very often, I might only need 2 or 3. Now, I will say this helped me, and a lot of pitchers don't do this, but I know it helped me. So I know in professional baseball, there were times where I would leave the dugout after the 3rd inning, and I would go out to the mound. I would jog out to the mound, and the catcher would go out with me. And I'd throw 2 pitches, and then on the 3rd one, I would tell the catcher to throw it down. I'd go from the stretch, throw the pitch, he would throw it down, and we'd get the inning going. There were times where the ball is thrown down to second base, and I get the ball back as it goes around the horn, and the batter had not even come out into the on-deck circle. Now, if you want to screw up a batter, that's a good tactic to do, because the batter hasn't even gotten his batting gloves on, and the umpire is saying, let's go, batter up, let's go. He wants the game moving. And so the batter feels rushed, and I felt that helped me. So it's something you don't often see, but it's an easy way to conserve your arm. If you can cut that pre-inning pitches by, instead of 5, maybe throw 4. Or in my case, maybe you have a particular inning where you only need 3. So only throw that. There's no need to throw more. And of course, you can now conserve those pitches for later in the game. Now, major leaguers can't do this for the most part. Okay, they can't rush hitters like this because in between innings, Major League Baseball, they have commercials. So that's one of the reasons why if you're actually at a Major League game and the inning ends, that other team sometimes takes forever to get out of the dugout and head out onto the field. And that is because the players know there's no reason to hustle out because you got 2 or 3 minutes of commercials. And so there's no rush. Now, even at the Major League level, if I'm a Major League pitcher, I could still do this. It's just that I can't get out to the mound as fast as I normally would because there's no sense of me throwing my 3 pitches and then having to wait 3 minutes until the commercials end, where the official or the umpires get the word to start the game up again. So, but at most levels, pitchers can take care of that. So, conserve your pre-inning pitches. Don't use 5 unless you absolutely need them. Okay, number 5, the last one here is to sit down in the dugout between innings. this seems obvious, but I've caught a lot of my pitchers not doing this basic thing, especially when they come off the base paths. Pitchers at the younger level, of course, they always hit. And so they're making outs in their fly balls and so forth. They're on the bases, they score, and they're running around the bases. Okay, well, if you're the pitcher, sit down. Get in the dugout and sit down. Don't keep walking around the dugout, talking to your teammates, laughing it up. If you're pitching, sit down. Conserve that energy. I always used to get upset as a hitter. I was cognizant of making sure that I was helping my pitcher and giving him a lot of time. So if the pitcher was on base and I was up next, I would take my good old time trying to get to the batter's box to allow that pitcher to get off the base paths, sit down, get a drink. And I couldn't stand it when I'm taking my time to get up to the plate and my pitcher is in there chatting away, laughing, walking around the dugout like he doesn't even realize what I'm doing to try to help him out. And I'm trying to get him to sit down. When I was a coach, if one of my pitchers came off the field, I would purposely, in many cases, call timeout, have the batter walk down to me, and I would tell the batter, listen, I don't really have anything to say to you. I'm just trying to give the pitcher time to get back into the dugout and sit down and rest. So just take your time getting back into the batter's box. And so that's tip number 5. If you're a pitcher, just an easy way to conserve your energy is to just sit down in between innings. It seems obvious, but a lot of pitchers generally don't do it. Okay, now with all this stuff, of course, there is no one size fits all. There's always going to be exceptions. And so these 5 tips, use them as a guideline, but hopefully these 5 tips will just get you thinking about ways that I can conserve energy and hopefully translate it into more pitches being able to be thrown later in the games. And maybe I don't have to be taken out in the 4th or 5th inning. Maybe I can last into the 6th, 7th, and maybe beyond. Okay, so when we come back, we'll talk about a blast from the past, and it'll also get into some pregame pitching routines for your players. Okay, in this part of the podcast, I typically will take a post that I have done in the past, whether it's a written post or a video or something like that, and explain it further. Now today, I'm just going to bring 2 posts that I did to your attention because they relate to a lot more specifics when it comes to your pregame warm-ups and pregame routine for pitchers. So I'll take you all the way back to April 27th and 28th of 2011. The first post that I did on that first date was pregame routine part 1, and that gave some very specific things on the idea of timing. And what I did was kind of mapped out if you have a 3:45 game, which was typically when I was a high school coach, what time our games were. So I mapped it out for my pitchers. If the game starts at 3:45, here is a 40-minute routine that you could do to make sure the timing of your routine works with a 3:45 start. And of course, if your game is at a different time, you could just kind of tweak the times and hopefully get you thinking about the timing it takes. Now, the very next day, I posted part 2 of that, and that got into a lot more specifics as to what to literally do when you step on the bullpen mound to get ready. And in that particular post, I created a chart that pitchers can follow, which will allow them to throw 30 pitches and really touch on all the things that they're going to need to work on. Location, all the various pitches, and even from the stretch. So again, these are just guidelines. You certainly can take a look at them and tweak them. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about them. I'm just going to let you know that in the podcast notes section on my website, Baseball by the Yard, if you click on the podcast symbol in the upper right of the website, that will take you to where all my podcasts are. And I typically will have the podcast there as well for you to listen to, but also underneath I put show notes. I put like quick little summary of the podcast as well as links to any of the resources that I talked about. So it's worth your while to check those 2 links out and get a lot of those finer points and those details on how to time your pregame routine well, and also to how to handle actually on the bullpen to monitor how many pitches you are throwing. Okay, so let's summarize things for today. Okay, so the podcast was called 5 Pitching Hacks to Conserve Energy. I went over those 5 hacks. Okay, be careful, be mindful of your pregame warm-ups, making sure you're not overexerting yourself, trying to conserve energy there. The second thing was stay on the mound as much as you can during the game. The third thing was manage your bullpen well with your pitches and your timing of it. Fourth was conserve your pre-inning pitches. You don't have to use all 5. And so cut back any time you can. And the last one of the 5 was make sure you're sitting down in the dugout, trying to conserve as much energy as possible. So, of course, exceptions apply, but hopefully you got some good tips to at least get you thinking about ways in which you can conserve energy in your games so that you can hopefully pitch a little bit later in the games. Okay, so let's pack up the gear and let's head home. Hey everybody, before you leave, if you like the show, you can be a big help when it comes to spreading the word. First, check out baseballbytheart.com. Be sure to subscribe and take what I call the 5-post challenge. Read any 5 of my blog posts, and I think you'll find that there's no baseball instructional website like it online. Second, check out the over 200 videos I posted on YouTube for players and coaches. While you're there, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you're notified every time I post a new video. And lastly, like, comment, and leave a review on all these platforms to help other people get this information too. I'm Coach Bob McCreary. Thank you so much for your time, and best of luck on your baseball journey.